Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that most people don't want to admit. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. And yet society would have you believe that if you're old and alone, well, you're just waiting around for the inevitable. That's nonsense, absolute nonsense. Because the truth is, solitude, when approached correctly, can be a source of immense strength. And old age, that can be your most intellectually and spiritually fulfilling chapter if you structure it properly. Now, let's get something clear. Humans are social creatures, no doubt. We thrive on meaningful interactions. But meaning isn't the same as mindless socializing. There's this dangerous modern assumption that staying busy, constantly engaging with people, or endlessly seeking external validation is what keeps you sane in your later years. That's not true. What keeps you sane is a sense of purpose. What keeps you thriving is the ability to cultivate your mind, refine your character, and engage deeply with the world in ways that align with who you are, not with who society expects you to be. People often assume that being alone means being lonely, but this is a deeply flawed understanding of human psychology. Loneliness is not simply the absence of people. It is the absence of meaningful connection, both with others and with oneself. A person can be surrounded by a crowd and feel completely disconnected, just as they can be entirely alone, yet feel deeply content. The difference lies in how one engages with solitude. In today's world, there is a societal push to constantly engage with others, as if being alone is something to be avoided at all costs. This mindset creates a dependency on external validation. People feel the need to be seen, to be heard, to be included. But when an individual relies on social interaction to define their worth, they become vulnerable to loneliness when those interactions fade, as they inevitably do in old age. Friends move away, family members get busy, and social circles shrink. If a person has not cultivated the ability to enjoy their own company, they may find themselves feeling lost. However, solitude can be a profound source of strength. It is in quiet moments alone that individuals can reflect on their lives, process experiences, and develop a deeper understanding of themselves. Without the distractions of constant socializing, one has the opportunity to engage in personal growth, explore new ideas, and pursue meaningful activities that do not depend on others. Great thinkers, artists, and innovators throughout history have often sought solitude not as a means of isolation, but as a necessary environment for creativity and self-discovery. The ability to be alone without feeling lonely requires a shift in perspective. Instead of seeing solitude as a void that needs to be filled, one can learn to see it as a space of potential. Reading, writing, engaging with nature, pursuing a hobby, or simply sitting with one's thoughts. These are not just ways to pass the time. They are opportunities to enrich life in ways that external interactions often cannot. The key is to develop a relationship with oneself that is fulfilling enough that solitude becomes a choice rather than a burden. When an individual reaches this state, loneliness loses its grip. Instead of fearing isolation, they embrace solitude as a valuable and necessary part of life. This is not to say that relationships are unimportant, far from it, but that one should not be dependent on them to feel whole. True fulfillment comes from within, and once that is realized, being alone is no longer something to be avoided, but something to be appreciated. Many people believe that the more they socialize, the better their lives will be. But this is a dangerous misconception. Socializing for the sake of it, without considering the depth or meaning of interactions, can actually lead to more loneliness rather than less. As people age, they are often told that staying socially active is the key to happiness. They are encouraged to join clubs, attend gatherings, and maintain a busy schedule of engagements. However, the true measure of a fulfilling social life is not how many people one interacts with, but the quality of those interactions. Superficial conversations and forced interactions drain energy rather than replenish it. A person can attend social events regularly and still feel empty if those interactions lack authenticity. On the other hand, a deep conversation with one truly valued friend can bring more joy and fulfillment than a dozen shallow exchanges. This is especially important in old age, when time becomes more precious. Every interaction should contribute positively to one's well-being rather than simply serve as a distraction from solitude. There is also a common fear that if one does not constantly engage in social activities, they will be forgotten or left behind. But real relationships are not based on frequency alone. They are built on genuine connection. If a friendship or relationship requires constant maintenance through forced socializing, it may not be as meaningful as one thinks. True friends remain connected not because of obligation, but because of shared values, mutual respect, and sincere interest in each other's lives. Instead of mindlessly seeking out social interactions, it is far more beneficial to be selective. Time should be spent with people who inspire, challenge, and uplift. Conversations should be thought-provoking rather than merely polite. In this way, socializing becomes an enriching experience rather than a tiresome obligation. It shifts from being something done out of fear of loneliness to something that enhances life. Being intentional about relationships does not mean avoiding people altogether. It means choosing the right people. It means seeking out individuals who bring wisdom, joy, and meaning, rather than simply filling space with noise. The goal is not to be constantly surrounded by others, but to ensure that when social interactions do occur, they are truly valuable. By prioritizing quality over quantity, one can create a social life that is deeply fulfilling, rather than just superficially busy. Many people enter old age believing that happiness comes from staying socially active, but the deeper truth is that fulfillment comes from having a sense of purpose. Without purpose, life becomes a series of distractions, a constant attempt to fill the silence with meaningless activity. This is why so many people, after retiring or experiencing major life changes, feel an unsettling emptiness. They lose the structure that once gave their days meaning, and instead of redefining their purpose, they desperately try to stay busy, hoping that activity alone will keep them content. But activity without purpose is just noise. It does not bring true satisfaction. Purpose is what gives life direction. It is what makes a person wake up in the morning feeling that their existence matters. It is not dependent on age, social status, or physical ability. Rather, it is a mindset, a way of approaching life with intention. Some find purpose in creative pursuits, others in intellectual growth, and some in contributing to their community in a meaningful way. What matters is that a person feels they are working towards something greater than momentary pleasure or mere survival. One of the most dangerous traps of old age is the belief that one's best years are behind them. This is a false and self-destructive idea. A person's value does not diminish just because they are no longer in the workforce or raising a family. In fact, later years can be a time of tremendous intellectual and spiritual growth. Free from many of life's earlier obligations, individuals have the opportunity to explore passions they previously set aside. Whether it is writing, painting, mentoring, studying philosophy, or even engaging in new business ventures, purpose remains available to anyone who seeks it. Those who approach old age with a strong sense of purpose tend to experience better mental and emotional well-being. They are less likely to feel lost or irrelevant because their fulfillment comes from within, not from external validation. They do not rely on constant social interaction to feel worthwhile, nor do they fear solitude because their time is spent meaningfully. True contentment does not come from merely staying occupied, but from knowing that each day holds significance. When a person has a reason to keep learning, creating, and contributing, they do not just endure life, they continue to truly live it. It is purpose, not busyness, that sustains the soul. Solitude is often seen as something to be avoided, a sign of isolation or even failure, but this is an incredibly flawed perspective. The truth is, solitude is an opportunity, an open space where a person can grow, reflect, and engage with life on a deeper level. The problem is that many people have never learned how to be alone in a way that is fulfilling. They treat solitude as an empty void that needs to be filled with distractions, rather than as a rich environment for self-discovery. When a person reframes solitude as an opportunity rather than a burden, everything changes. Instead of feeling like they have been cut off from the world, they begin to see their time alone as a chance to invest in themselves. This could mean diving into books that challenge their thinking, engaging in creative work, or simply sitting in quiet contemplation. It is in solitude that people gain clarity about their values, their aspirations, and their past experiences. Without the noise of constant social interaction, they are able to hear their own thoughts more clearly. Many of the world's greatest minds have understood the value of solitude. Thinkers, artists, and philosophers throughout history have intentionally sought out time alone to refine their ideas and deepen their understanding of the world. They did not see solitude as something to escape, but as something to embrace. In fact, true self-awareness and intellectual depth often come from periods of deep solitude. This is not about withdrawing from the world permanently, but about developing the ability to stand apart from it when necessary. A major reason people fear solitude is that it forces them to confront themselves. Without distractions, they are left with their own thoughts, their own memories, and their own uncertainties. But this confrontation is not something to avoid, it is something to work through. The ability to sit with one's own mind without needing constant stimulation is a sign of inner strength. It means a person has built a solid internal foundation, one that is not dependent on the presence or validation of others. Embracing solitude does not mean rejecting relationships or society. It simply means recognizing that time alone is not wasted time. It is an essential part of a balanced and meaningful life. Those who can fully appreciate solitude develop a sense of independence and contentment that makes every aspect of life richer, whether they are alone or with others. The ability to enjoy one's own company is one of the most valuable skills a person can develop, yet many people never master it. From an early age, society teaches individuals to seek companionship, to surround themselves with others, and to fill silence with conversation. While relationships are an important part of life, an over-reliance on social interaction creates a dangerous dependency. If a person cannot be alone without feeling restless or empty, they have not yet built a strong internal foundation. There is a fundamental difference between solitude and loneliness. Loneliness is the feeling of lacking connection, while solitude is the ability to be at peace with oneself. The difference comes down to perspective. A person who dreads being alone sees it as a void, something to escape through distractions, television, social media, meaningless conversations. On the other hand, a person who has learned to enjoy their own company sees solitude as a gift, an opportunity to engage with their thoughts, pursue their interests, and cultivate personal growth. When a person can be alone without feeling lonely, they are free. They no longer rely on external validation to feel content. They do not need constant invitations, text messages, or social events to confirm their worth. They have developed an inner world that is rich and engaging, independent of outside forces. This level of self-sufficiency is rare, but it is incredibly powerful. It allows a person to navigate life with a sense of stability rather than constantly searching for external reassurance. One of the best ways to strengthen this ability is through intentional solitude. Instead of filling every quiet moment with distractions, one can use that time for reflection, learning, and creative pursuits. Reading books, writing, practicing a skill, or simply taking a walk alone. These activities deepen a person's relationship with themselves. Over time, they come to realize that they are not missing anything by being alone, rather they are gaining something valuable. There is nothing wrong with seeking companionship, but it should be a choice, not a necessity. A person who enjoys their own company does not fear solitude, nor do they need to force social interactions to avoid discomfort. They engage with others out of genuine interest, not desperation. This kind of self-sufficiency creates a profound sense of peace. When a person reaches this point, they are no longer at the mercy of loneliness because they have built a life that is fulfilling even in solitude. As people age, the pressure to remain socially active often intensifies. Society constantly pushes the idea that maintaining a busy social calendar is the key to happiness and relevance. This belief leads to the mistaken assumption that a person's worth is directly tied to how often they interact with others. The truth, however, is that the real value of socializing lies not in its frequency, but in its depth. It is not about how many events one attends or how many people one knows, but about the quality of the connections made and the fulfillment those relationships provide. In older age, when time becomes more limited, it is essential to be selective about social interactions. Instead of mindlessly filling the calendar with meetings and gatherings, one should focus on relationships that contribute positively to their life. The goal is not to be constantly surrounded by people, but to spend time with those who bring genuine joy, offer meaningful conversation, and share values that align with one's own. These kinds of relationships are far more enriching than the shallow connections that often fill the hours of busy social lives. The pressure to socialize can also be rooted in the fear of being left out or forgotten. Many people worry that if they stop participating in every social event, they will lose touch with the world or become irrelevant. But relevance is not about being at every gathering or always being in the loop. It's about the impact one has on the lives of others, the contributions one makes to their community, and the quality of relationships they nurture. Being selective with social interactions does not lead to isolation. Instead, it allows one to invest more deeply in the people and activities that truly matter. Moreover, genuine socializing should not feel like an obligation or a means to fill time. It should be a space where individuals can connect on a deeper level, whether through shared experiences, stimulating discussions, or acts of kindness. When socializing becomes about fulfilling societal expectations rather than personal joy, it loses its meaning and can quickly become exhausting and unsatisfying. In the later stages of life, people should focus on socializing in ways that nourish their well-being, not merely to keep busy. When relationships are cultivated intentionally, they become a source of strength rather than a burden. The key is to prioritize quality over quantity, engaging with people who truly enrich one's life rather than seeking constant interaction for the sake of avoiding solitude. This approach leads to a more meaningful, satisfying social life, free from the need to conform to external pressures.